All right, the Home Rule Charter Commission meeting is back in session at 8:15. I want to thank everyone for being so engaged tonight. Before we get started, I thought before this passes, if you pull your minutes out, just so we can dispense with these. Yeah, and by the way, Mr. Harris said that the minutes were not emailed, and that what I was looking at was all the agendas that were sent out. But the way I use the ISD email, you got to click that little arrow to keep seeing if there are more attachments. So this is confession for the record. I didn't think that I might have clicked enough to the right. And I'm going to be taken to school by Mr. Harris to show me the appropriate way to use all the lovely features of the ISD email system. So if you will just take a minute to look, if you'll notice under 5 general discussion, it says support our public schools, and on the agenda it was saved, but the minutes will reflect that it's support. And I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes subject to any future correction. It's been moved by Commissioner Flores, seconded by Commissioner Vesey. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And now we have our community hour schools. There's a presentation, and we thank you for your patience. And we will not run out at 8:15. Oh, it's 8:15 already. So please introduce yourselves and tell us what's in the folder. Would you like us to follow along or watch on our monitor? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Commissioners. First of all, thank you for your service to our community and for the opportunity to make this presentation. My name is David Lee. I'm joined on my right by Lorraine Montemayor, and on my left by Edward Turner, who is co-chair of our community, our schools. The information in your packet, there are multiple pieces there, including this PowerPoint that we will use throughout our presentation, a copy of the remarks that we'll make, and some additional documentary information. You may peruse it at your leisure or follow along. It's there at your request to provide documentation for each group that presents. So our community, our schools, our OCOS, is a coalition of more than 20 organizations and faith-based groups that represent over 150,000 members of the Dallas ISD community. We represent parents, community members, activists, leaders. OCOS members include, pardon me, it's a long list, Alliance AFT, the Texas Organizing Project, Texas AFT, Dallas NAACP number 6169, LULAC District 3, Coalition for an Accountable System of Education, or CASE, the Dallas AFL-CIO Central Labor Council, NEA Dallas, the Texas State Teachers Association, North Texas Jobs with Justice, Dallas Friends of Public Education, the Foundation for Community Empowerment, Tejanos Democrats, Stop the Takeover, Mexican American Democrats, the Oak Cliff Coalition for the Arts, the Association of Hispanic School Administrators, Zan Holmes Community Outreach Center, Texas Alliance for Retired Americans, or TARA, Dallas School Administrators Association, the American Federation of Teachers, Mike Dryden, Gene Hauser, Jim Burke, Bill Betson, and Pastors for Texas Children. We recently joined the Alliance to Reclaim Our Schools, a national alliance fighting for educational justice and equity and access to school resources and opportunities. We're also joined by many members of our organization. Would everyone who is a member of our community, our schools, please stand? Thank you. The launch of the Home Rule Charter Initiative brought us together. Like most people, we had many questions. We were troubled by the secrecy and misinformation that characterized the supporters of the petition drive that led to the creation of this commission. It became clear to us that almost everyone who signed the petition did so under the false pretense of supporting public schools. Little or no explanation of what dissolving our independent school district and replacing it with a home rule charter district would mean for our students, families, and communities was offered. Despite all the talk of a mandate for home rule charter, we realized that the voices of the people most impacted by this initiative were not being heard and felt obligated to ensure that the citizens of our communities, the moms and dads, grandparents, family members, and students are heard just as loudly as the small, shadowy group of wealthy financiers driving the home rule charter effort. We believe that a real, sustainable plan to help raise student achievement must be developed with input from parents, educators, and members of our community. That plan should be rooted in proven methods that we know lead to better outcomes for all students. The proponents of Home Rule Charter District schools have failed to offer a research-based plan to improve student achievement. The HRCD initiative was conceived in secrecy by a small group of wealthy backers and continues to be shrouded in mystery. In a Home Rule Charter District, there are no guarantees or safeguards that preserve caps on class sizes, due process for students, parents, and educators, and full local public accountability and input. And should the Dallas voters approve any kind of Home Rule Charter, litigation will ensue, causing more instability and confusion in the district, which will in turn adversely affect our students. In recent years, Dallas ISD schools and students have overcome steep odds to make real progress. But Dallas ISD is not where it needs to be, and there is room for improvement. When school leaders and teachers work together with parents and community members, we can develop community-driven strategies that result in improved outcomes. The path to genuine reform for our neighborhood public schools must include, not shut out, all members of our community. Studies have shown that schools work best for students when all stakeholders, students, parents, educators, school leaders, community members, have opportunities for meaningful input and a real voice in key decisions about education. Public education, in Dallas, like in many other large urban cities, is under attack. There are a number of well-funded schemes that threaten to undermine Dallas ISD schools and students, like private school vouchers that rob resources from public school classrooms, and the Home Rule Charter District takeover effort. These anti-public school ploys are backed by profit-driven education speculators who would put corporate earnings ahead of what is best for students. As members of the Dallas ISD community, we share the responsibility to work together to fulfill the vision of a great public education for all children, which will equip them to assume the rights and responsibilities of citizens in our democratic society. We've come together around the belief that a high-quality public education is essential to prepare our children for a bright future. Our coalition launched a grassroots partnership that brings together those in our community who are invested in the improvement and preservation of our public schools. We believe that our neighborhood public schools are more than just buildings. They are the heart of our community. It's time to recognize our schools as pivotal to the economic and social well-being of our neighborhoods, city, and state. So as we mark the 60th anniversary of the Brown versus Board of Education ruling, in May of 2014, our coalition launched a series of community conversations to discuss our shared vision for great schools in Dallas ISD. We invited parents, community leaders and members, faith-based organizations, civic and business groups, students and educators from every quadrant of Dallas ISD to participate. Our goal was to provide authentic opportunities to engage our community, to hear from those who are affected both directly and indirectly by school reform, in the process to develop a real plan to improve Dallas ISD neighborhood public schools. Over 1,000 community members attended these meetings, and it quickly became apparent that there is an urgent cry from our community for a great school for every child. With the input of our community, we have identified proven, research-based strategies to help us get there. A complete report of the plan developed during the community conversations will be provided to each of you in the very near future. We'd like to share a preview of that report today. And so here's an overview of our vision. Number 1, supports that move beyond the classroom. Implement a community schools model with wraparound services to meet the social, emotional, and health needs of children and their families. Provide a community liaison at every Dallas ISD public school. Collaborate with community members. Number 2, rich, culturally relevant curriculum and programs. Provide full art, music, science, history, and world language programs. Include instruction that reflects the rich traditions and diverse cultures of our city. Expand science, technology, engineering, and mathematics programs. Provide a full-time librarian, a full-time nurse, and an adequate number of full-time guidance counselors in every school. Number 3, successful learning and teaching environments. Ensure equal access to high-quality educational programs for all DISD students. Maintain smaller class size limits. Eliminate over-testing and high-stakes testing. Guarantee provisions to meet special education needs. Ensure a highly qualified, well-supported teacher in every classroom. Invest in fair, competitive salaries to attract and retain high-quality educators. Provide quality, research-based professional development for teachers. Number 4, early childhood education. Expand access to high-quality early childhood learning opportunities. Provide universal all-day pre-kindergarten and universal full-day kindergarten. And finally, number 5, healthy, inclusive school climate. Develop fair and non-discriminatory discipline policies. Ensure full funding to provide optimal resources in every school and classroom. Foster more involvement and accessibility of the elected school board. And finally, encourage greater transparency with district information and increase opportunities for parent and community engagement. So looking at number 1, supports that move beyond the classroom. Research confirms that what happens outside schools and classrooms has a significant impact on student achievement. Most people understand that when children come to school hungry, they aren't ready to learn. A child worried about stresses at home and in his neighborhood, like violence or a parent's employment situation, may be less able to focus on learning. We know that a high-quality education is the best way to prepare children for a brighter future. But there's a vital need in our community to address out-of-school factors that hinder success inside the classroom. This imperative is the responsibility of the entire community, faith-based groups, community groups, the public, and the private sector. One way to address those factors is to create community schools. Dallas ISD residents voiced overwhelming support for them, particularly in our highest need neighborhoods, during the OCOS community conversations. Community schools provide students and families with supports and services that make a powerful difference and can help break the cycle of poverty and imprisonment. These wraparound services are not meant to replace staff in schools that are currently doing some of this work, but to expand and amplify their efforts. A community school isn't a program, but a collaborative approach to providing supports for students and families that translate into student success. A well-conceived collaborative effort between schools, government, and partner agencies is often accomplished by aligning and strategically uniting or using existing resources. Community schools have often been launched in response to and in the midst of severe budget shortfalls. In fact, community school partners often achieve more effective outcomes and fiscal efficiencies by eliminating duplicative efforts. While some families don't need much assistance in order to raise their children well, there are many families that do because of emotional or financial stress or because they lack positive parenting role models. Since families influence student success even more than teachers, it makes sense that we would prioritize supporting the entire family. And there's evidence from around the country, cities around the country, such as Tulsa, Oklahoma, Cincinnati, Portland, Oregon, Sacramento, California, that community schools revitalize cities by transforming neighborhood public schools into neighborhood anchors where services are coordinated to improve the lives of children and families. Another way to address these issues is to provide a community liaison at every Dallas ISD school. Making the vision of a great school for every child in our city a reality requires real community input and accountability. A community liaison helps ensure that schools are operating in compliance with county, state, and federal requirements, provides useful information to students and families on available support service, communicates school district news, activities, and procedures to the community and families, and refers families to other agencies as needed. Finally, we need to put the public back into public education. Now is the time for all community members, parents, educators, business leaders, elected officials, civic and faith-based groups to join together as public education stakeholders. The foundation of public education is the belief that all children are important and therefore we should seek equality of opportunity for each of them. When communities come together, they are empowered to make a difference for all children. Vision area number 2, rich culturally relevant curriculum and programs. An environment of over-testing, created in large part by the requirements of the federal No Child Left Behind Act, Race to the Top policies, and additional DISD testing requirements, has narrowed our children's curriculum dramatically. Excessive high-stakes testing, coupled with state and local budget cuts, has taken away valuable instruction time in areas that help develop critical thinking, problem solving, and the ability to work with others. In many elementary schools, students have limited access to art, music, and physical education classes. All DISD children, regardless of their socioeconomic status, deserve the same educational advantages enjoyed by their suburban counterparts. DISD stakeholders want full art, music, science, history, and world language programs in our schools. Our parents want more for their children than just training for standardized tests. They want a rigorous, well-rounded curriculum so their children may compete and succeed in an ever-changing global economy. A transformative public education means ensuring that children have an engaging, rigorous curriculum that includes areas ranging from fine arts, foreign languages, civics, the sciences, literature, and mathematics, as well as recess, physical education, athletic opportunities, after-school activities, and clubs. These subjects improve creativity, ingenuity, and the love of learning. Our communities, as you all know, are diverse, and the curriculum should reflect the various cultures and traditions of our residents and students. A curriculum that includes and honors the cultural diversity of students helps children feel more welcomed, validated, and integrated into the learning process, and prepares them for success in a diverse society. We should expand science, technology, engineering, and math programs. Instruction in STEM is essential to the future of education and to our children. In an age when technology is constantly advancing and evolving, all students need access to high-quality STEM instruction and programs. Finally, we should provide enough full-time librarians, nurses, and guidance counselors in every school. They provide essential services to meet student needs. Guidance counselors fill multiple important roles, including obtaining services critical to the success of at-risk students. Children cannot schedule their illnesses to coincide with a part-time nurse's schedule. Librarians support classroom instruction and instill a love of reading and learning, which will last into adulthood. Vision Area 3, successful learning and teaching environments. The community's vision for Dallas ISD schools calls on the district to move away from policies that emphasize test scores and data toward a focus centered on creating successful learning and teaching environments where all students and teachers are supported. That means rejecting the popular test and punish approach to accountability and embracing support and improve measures that help lift schools and students. Our community believes strongly that equitable access to a high-quality public education is the right of every child, regardless of race, gender, or socioeconomic status, for which we must continue to fight. Support for small class sizes in Dallas ISD schools was echoed repeatedly by parents, educators, and community members who attended the OCOS community conversations. In a 2014 survey of Dallas ISD community members, 64% of respondents want to maintain class size limits. Class size reduction is one of the few evidence-based reforms proven effective, according to the Institute of Education Sciences of the U.S. Department of Education. A definitive review published in 2014 declared that, quote, the payoff for class size reduction is greater for low-income and minority children, while any increases in class size will likely be most harmful to those populations. Our vision calls for a commitment to maintain the existing class size limits as defined by state law and district policy. Our vision is to ensure that Dallas ISD schools enable students to embrace the opportunities and face the challenges that await them. We understand the importance of gauging and evaluating student learning. The judicious use of standardized testing and sensible accountability measures can be useful in assessing progress and refining instruction. But the current overemphasis on test-based accountability has led to teaching that limits students' overall learning experiences. It's time to get smart about testing. Our vision calls for testing that is used to improve instruction for students and help improve schools, not punish kids and teachers and close schools. Testing should be more than a one-time snapshot. Students should be able to explain and demonstrate what they know, not just fill in the right bubble on a multiple choice question. Assessments of student achievement must be comprehensive and include multiple measures which address the different ways in which students learn. Tests must be aligned with standards and curriculum, and the frequency must be streamlined. Vision area number 4. This is an area where we happen to agree with the previous presentation. Early childhood education. Our community wants Dallas ISD to expand access to high-quality early childhood learning opportunities. For every dollar spent on early childhood education, we save up to $17 on other social services, including prison. Investing in quality early learning programs is the most efficient way to affect school and life success and reduce school expenditures later. We should provide universal all-day pre-kindergarten and offer full-day kindergarten. Research confirms the importance of laying the foundation for future academic success by starting children in quality early education programs. Too many of our students start out behind from the moment they first set foot on a DISD campus. It is vital that our early childhood programs have well-prepared teachers instructing small classes. Our youngest learners deserve a strong start through rich programs with a challenging but young, child-friendly curriculum. Vision area 5, healthy, inclusive school climate. A significant number of participants in the community conversations expressed concerns that all too often, reform efforts by Dallas ISD trustees and administrators come in the form of policies that have the effect of undervaluing and demeaning teachers. We have a vision for how we can create a healthy, inclusive school climate for our children and for educators in Dallas ISD. There is definitive research that learning is enhanced when teachers collaborate with one another rather than compete for recognition and compensation. Our schools must develop fair and non-discriminatory discipline policies that move towards ending the school-to-prison pipeline, an alarming phenomenon where students, particularly minority and disadvantaged students, are pushed from the classroom into the criminal justice system. We call for the development of a community-driven plan to identify alternative disciplinary solutions to reduce race and gender disparities in school discipline. Amongst other things, this plan must ensure there are resources in schools and classrooms to help educators create and maintain positive learning, teaching, and learning environments. Education funding is an important factor in school quality. Most states are providing less per pupil funding for K through 12 education than they did just 6 years ago. This reduction has had serious consequences for local school districts and has undermined their ability to deliver high quality education. It's time we commit to full funding for the vital school resources to help kids succeed. Our citizens believe an elected board system of single-member districts provides the best representation and accountability for our community. We also believe that it works best when the board members are more engaged in the challenges confronting the school district. Parents and others who participated in the community conversation said repeatedly that the accountability that comes with an elected school board is important to them. They opposed any changes that would take away their right to directly elect these officials. They also voiced concern that some elected school trustees have not always been as responsive to the public or as engaged in addressing the school district's challenges as they should be. There must be systems in place to ensure that Dallas ISD Board trustees hear from the residents in their districts and act in the best interests of the students in our schools. We believe that citizen participation in the election of board members can best be done by teaching our students their responsibilities as citizens and voters. We believe that massive campaign contributions from outside entities lacking real roots in our communities discourage citizen involvement. We believe elected board members should be responsive to all citizens instead of a small group making huge financial contributions that lead to less representative, less competitive elections. Engaging with parents and members of our community is fundamental to the goal of ensuring a great school for every Dallas ISD student. We have outlined tonight our community-driven vision for improving public education in Dallas ISD schools. It will take a fully engaged community to make this vision a reality. School leaders and staff must increase opportunities to include parents in activities and decisions. Parents, community members, and school staff can be a powerful force when we all work together. In conclusion, we ask the Home Rule Charter Commission to take the information we've gathered and the information you have gathered through your own community meetings and create a list of recommendations for our schools that could be implemented by the DISD Board of Trustees without writing a home rule charter. Consider what people were asked when presented with the home rule charter petition. Do you want better schools? Do you support public schools? We all want that. But home rule charter is a distraction created by a single disgruntled trustee and his handful of big money backers. Despite their lofty claims, the driving factor behind the Home Rule Charter initiative is not the best interests of our citizens, students, and communities, but rather a political fight over governance and control of our schools. There is no credible evidence which supports the notion that simply changing the governance of our schools will produce the kind of far-reaching changes our students need. We challenge you to reject this takeover attempt. Instead of playing politics, let's work toward real solutions for the more than 160,000 Dallas ISD students, their families, and our communities. You can do that by endorsing the real, community-driven, and research-based solutions we have offered, instead of creating an experimental home rule charter with no guarantees of success. Thank you again for your service. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight.
Well said. You've sat through enough of these. It's question time. And notwithstanding the lateness of the hour, everyone looks perky here. Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Sandell. There you go. I want to make sure you're perky. Yes. So, Commissioner Mendez, do you want to start? We're going to reverse the order.
Yes, I'll start.
No, I'm going to go get to him. I'm just going to see who's awake here. Yeah. Commissioner Mendez.
Okay. You're asking us not to write a charter and to write recommendations for the board. How can we ensure that those recommendations actually become or actually become steps to change the school system? From listening to the previous presentation, a charter could actually help push that, a change in the school system. What's your response to that?
I'm not sure that a charter is necessarily the best mechanism to do that. To answer the first part of your question, I think that one thing you could do is make sure that your recommendations are as widely disseminated and published as possible throughout the city. I know that the mayor and city council have been looking for ways to help. There's a way they can help. Let's make sure that the recommendations you come up with are broadcast throughout our city. The trustees will then have to answer to the public, as we do in a democratic society. When it comes time for the next election, I would expect their constituents to ask, what have you done based on these recommendations? This is not something that we just pulled together and decided to make up. This is the result of a year of work, of focus group meetings where a broad plan was not presented to people. People came in, they were asked 4 questions, which you have in your packet, and they were allowed free form to provide their input. This is what the people of Dallas want. So help us make it widely available through your plan, incorporate what you've learned in your own meetings, and then let the democratic process hold our trustees accountable, as we've done for over 200 years in this country.
Commissioner Freeman.
I wrote down very similar question, but I have a second question. At the beginning, you were talking about, and we've heard this several times about like the whole corporate takeover idea and the idea that people are doing this to try to make a profit. And I guess, could you help me understand that? Because I don't quite understand, I guess, how someone could make a profit off of a school district charter. And maybe that's just my lack of information there.
Well, I mean, the speculation on that could go for a long group of time. The fact of the matter is, just as you yourselves found out in your cursory examination of the charter we were surprised with this evening, is that there's a lot of information that's not completely fleshed out. The concept of a Trojan horse has been brought up. Once you move to a charter system, then it's relatively easy to amend that charter. And wide areas of the district, individual schools, could be handed over to private entities. I mean, there's no limit to that. It may not, they're not going to explicitly say that.
I guess just to clarify though, even if, I guess the question is, where is the incentive for a corporation to want to take over a school, or to, like, where is the profit coming from in that situation?
Well, what you want to look at is a lot of these charter schools are receiving money from Goldman Sachs, Walmart, Bill Gates Foundation. There is a corporate stock market push to privatize education. Education is $1 trillion industry. You know, you have to think about the bubble. If you could have gotten in the oil bubble or the internet bubble or the housing bubble before it burst, you would have made a lot of money. Now education is the next bubble that's going to burst. And Texas is, DSD is almost ground zero for it. So even if you break up a school and the school is failing, then you're going to have to bring in private companies to help those schools out. And who are they going to receive money from? The state of Texas is going to have to come in and help support that school, as well as the taxpayers. So that's an opportunity to make money, to get contracts with the state, to help survive, to help struggling schools.
So then, one last thing, I'm sorry.
Go on.
So then would it be possible to add, let's say if we were to produce a charter, would it be possible to add a provision or provisions to prevent that kind of thing? Like adding in language saying that given certain circumstances or under the circumstances that, this specific action is prohibited.
My understanding is, as long as it didn't violate state or federal law, you could do so. But keep in mind, through the amendment process, that language could be amended or eliminated. And Mr. Turner is absolutely right. If you look at many of the investment advisors, many of the publications that are out there, there is a growing movement in this country to profitize our education system. Whether or not that's directly related to this effort, but when you look at the funding and the unanswered questions about the funders of the Home Rule Charter Initiative, it certainly merits some consideration.
Okay, we're going to go back across the group. Finish your sentence.
Okay. I actually had a question. On page 9, you talk about us developing fair and non-discriminatory discipline policies, alternative discipline solutions. Are you referring to PBIS there specifically, or just programs like that?
I think that as a coalition, PBIS is an example. It may not be the only example that would meet those requirements. It's certainly a good one, as you learned, that's been research-based and proven in other communities. And so we would have no issue supporting PBIS, but we wouldn't necessarily only say PBIS.
Well, I would actually like to see more research on other programs as well, because if we're going to consider them, I'd like to kind of see them. So if you know of anything specific, that would be great. And I kind of wanted to speak to Commissioner Freeman's comment. We have recently in this district gone from teaching according to Bloom's taxonomy, which is well respected, to something called depth of knowledge, which means somebody's making a big fat bunch of money on a new contract for all kinds of documents and programs and training, that suddenly somebody made a bunch of money on that. That's how private people get involved. Do we go with Bloom's taxonomy? Do you go with Webb's depth of knowledge? Where does that come from? Who knows? That's how people make money, I believe. I'm done.
Okay.
Thanks for coming, gentlemen. I'd like for you guys to talk a little bit about the community schools, the idea of community schools. does that jive with Destination 2020? Are those the types of schools of choice you think that the district is talking about? And do those community schools fit everywhere in this district? How do you guys see that fit?
Well, you've asked several questions, and I'll do my best to answer those. The first question, to some degree, there are some elements of the superintendent's current plan and future plans that may appear on the surface similar to community schools. I'm not sure that's I'm not sure they match completely. Community schools, it's not a one-size-fits-all model. Even if we were to implement community schools in Dallas, the community school in East Dallas, where I live, may not look the same as the community school in West Dallas because the needs are different in each community. I'm not sure how much buy-in and participation there has been from our communities in the creation of the superintendent's current plans. That would, to me, be one of the key thresholds, is how much buy-in, how much participation, because if you don't have community engagement, then your school's not going to be successful. The programs aren't going to be used, and certainly you don't want to duplicate programs that are unnecessary. What they found in some of the schools, some of the communities that have implemented community schools, is that it didn't cost a lot of extra money because many of these services were being offered in the school, but no one really knew about it. And the providers themselves didn't know that the other providers were in the building. Oh, you're providing that assistance? We didn't know about that. Well, we're doing this. We can work together. So a community school is a more collaborative model, I believe.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Ranger?
Early childhood education. I remember reading research, I've forgotten what study it was, but that indicated that even though early childhood education did clearly provide benefits to children who had quality early childhood education as opposed to babysitting services, that quality educational early education did provide tremendous benefits. But the same study said that those benefits were not continued, I believe, beyond the 4th grade. That once you hit a certain grade level, all of a sudden those kids somehow, mysteriously, lose many of those benefits. Now, you don't have to answer this right now. If you come across any studies that show more long-term benefits, I would appreciate it if you would submit that to us. I'm not even asking a question on that. Because I think it's very important. I didn't have early childhood education. I played until 6 years old, whatever it was. And that's all I did ever since, all the time. And then I went to school. But kids need it, but we ought to be able to sustain the long-term benefits of early childhood education. So if you have any studies or come across that, please share that. My question is about governance. Your counterpart this evening, Support Our Public Schools, submitted a charter document which suggests that trustees ought to be able to remove a fellow trustee. I believe it says that trustees can, by a certain vote, decide that because a trustee has not adhered to their interpretation of the responsibility to adhere to policies, etc., then they can vote to remove that trustee. Not recall the trustee, to remove the trustee. And then they can recommend to the Commissioner of Education that a trustee be removed. And if the commissioner does not respond within a certain period of time, that trustee would automatically be removed. I can't think of anything more political, more intended, and likely to result in the nullification of single-member districts. In other words, trustees are now determined, not 110,000 voters, but a majority or whatever the number was stated in the provision would now be able to cancel out an election. And a group of politically or controlled or bought trustees or just people who don't like a certain trustee. Now, excuse me for talking about it too long, but my question is, what do you think that does to single-member districts? But more importantly, does it politicize the board by giving such a powerful mechanism to fellow trustees to just arbitrarily decide they're going to remove another trustee?
I think it would severely weaken the power of single-member districts and the representation of the constituents in those districts. And I think it's a very dangerous precedent. Because if you think about it, that means that a majority on the board could eliminate any dissent, could eliminate any voices that would question the current direction of the district. And that may be something that some corporate structure might use, but that's not democracy. We don't always have to agree, and we don't expect our board members to always agree. I think dissenting voices are very important, and I would hate to see a system that would allow them to be removed simply because the majority of the board did not share their viewpoint.
And that's almost similar to taxation without representations. And just think about it. You know, these guys come here and they have the audacity to present a charter to you all and talking about coming up with some plan where they can automatically decide to get rid of trustees. That should tell you right there what their motives are. They are trying to privatize the school district. They're trying to make a scapegoat for Mike Miles. They are trying to do a number of things that do not involve the community input. And if you ask me, for the record, these guys are full of crap.
All right, we're in the DISD building.
That was the best choice of words I could think of.
I got it.
All right.
Commissioner? Okay.
I yield for now.
Pardon me?
I yield for now.
Okay, Commissioner Vince.
I have no question.
I yield. Well, I mean,
All right.
Commissioner Ranger,
Okay.
I was gonna ask about early childhood.
There is no
but that's-
compulsion here to ask a question. This is not school. There's no DOL about asking. Commissioner.
I want to thank you for coming forward and obviously putting a lot of time, and I'm very impressed with the cross-section of organizations you brought forward. This would have been a great presentation had I been approving the budget of the DISD, but we're not doing that. However, in looking at that, what kind of financial impact would this have on the district to hire full-time librarians, nurses, guidance, in every one of the schools? What kind of money are we talking about that the district has to come up with?
And I don't have a dollar amount today, but it certainly would require reallocation of resources. And if you look at the current budget, I believe that administrative costs could be significantly streamlined without going too far into detail, and refocusing some of those funding to the campus level. I understand some large school districts actually even devise their funding based on each campus as opposed to a top-down approach, and that might be something worth considering. Some of these things could be implemented. You're right. The hiring of additional staff would require an allocation of resources. We're eagerly anticipating the results of the school funding lawsuit and hope to see some movement from that. And we have a new legislative session coming. So this is an ongoing issue, and not everything that we would like to see can be implemented immediately. But I believe we could reallocate some resources so that more of them are on the campuses. I know that didn't exactly answer your question. One thing I would like to point out about our coalition is that we're not here. We may have gathered in response to Home Rule Charter, but that's not the only reason we're here. We're here to improve outcomes for students. We're going to be around. When Home Rule Charter is decided one way or the other, we will be here working on behalf of students. So we plan to continue to work on these issues, research, gather information, gather community input, and whether this body creates a charter and the school board changes, or the school board, we'll be working with whoever's down here.
Thank you.
Well,
Commissioner Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ranger, he did a lot of playing, but I think he turned out all right.
And by the way, the research on early childhood is clear that play is essential and should be incorporated in the curriculum and in the school day. So you were playing, but you were learning at the same time.
And I'll apologize to Chairman or Commissioner Isom Newsom, because I guess it's me about 5 minutes before I get to ask questions, the cold air starts to come. So I'm sorry to everybody in the room. But you mentioned that race to the top, as well as what's the other?
No Child Left
No Child Left Behind, that it seems to limit our curriculum and going to play and well-roundedness and so forth. Is that because they only test on particular subjects, or do you believe there are provisions in there that say, no, you can't teach anything else?
I think it's a combination of the test and punish mentality and the fact that there are so many financial ramifications for performance on tests for schools, and also the fact that it is limited to certain subjects. One of the misconceptions, though, that we've heard presented to you is that schools lack flexibility in terms of curriculum and instruction. That's actually not true. If you look at the course codes from the Texas Education Agency, in every category of instruction there's something called special topics, and schools and instructors can apply to teach those. When I was at Townview, I taught a semester course in military history. It's nowhere in the TEKS, but it was approved by the state, and I had a small group of students that took it as an elective. So for example, when we talk about diverse curriculum and instruction that reflects our community, there's nothing that prevents us right now from offering courses on African American heritage and history or Hispanic heritage and history, so that our students are more versed in those subjects. The challenge becomes one of scheduling in some cases because of the mandatory credits, but it is available right now. Just like another thing that we've heard about students with internships and half days. That's not true either, because we have students right now that are interning with law firms and hospitals and doctors' offices all over the city. Most of the students at Townview and many of the other magnets spend every other day, half a day, interning on a job site. So there is flexibility under the current system. I don't know if that answered your question completely, but there's some flexibility now. We'd like more, of course.
And related to testing, I believe you said rather than the high stakes testing, we should have support and improve measures. And in our role, I guess we're kind of here to, there is that option of not writing a charter, and we can write a set of recommendations, and I appreciate the information you gave us and the presentation and so forth. There are some very valuable recommendations, and I wonder if we did that, if we wrote a list of recommendations, who would listen to us any more than they listen to you guys? You have a set of recommendations, and we 15 people who are just people would simply have recommendations. But thinking as an alternative to those high stakes tests, and again going back to what you said of support and improve measures, how would that look?
Well, for example, I can tell you from personal experience that I often had students that really struggled on any type of standardized test, but I knew that they knew the material. And I think any teacher can attest that. I have students that could do an oral presentation that would be far better than anything I could do tonight, or create an art project that illustrated a concept. Right now, those students are lost in the system. They're learning, and they are learning, doesn't show up on a mandated state test, doesn't help their school, and the school is judged, and the student in many cases is judged as a result of it. So when we say flexibility, a student ought to be able to offer a performance piece or a project or a written composition instead of, there ought to be flexibility in assessment, because just like students learn in different ways, they can express that learning in different ways. And the current testing system does not allow for that.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I just want to give you another bite of the apple, Commissioners.
Get closer to you.
Please.
Thank you for your presentation. I too am taken by the coalition partners that you have listed. And I am getting to a question, Mr. Chair, but would want to note that I too am very happy that we are having community conversations about education. So that old notion about if you take a lemon, you can either make lemonades or you can have a sour face. And I'm glad to see and hope that will continue that we make lemonade out of what for some people was a pretty bad situation. But having said that, looking at these coalition of partners and thinking through the whole notion that recommendations versus a charter will depend on the will of the school board. Have you all given any thought to how you might leverage this coalition? I mean, some pretty powerful folks here to do three things. One, to leverage it to push the school board to focus more on the kinds of learnings that we've heard from Support Our Schools, from your group last week. Because I think at the end of the day, everybody wants something done to improve the school district for its children. And I'm of the opinion that there were probably, all the groups are probably closer in their thinking than they are apart. And so if they could come together around those things that we can agree upon, we'd probably be a lot further along than this gnashing and pulling about charter, no charter. We could focus on what's in the best interest of kids and come together. But have you all thought about how you might leverage the power of this coalition and pulling other folks? Because at the end of the day, it does come down to the school board. Those 9 folk, really 5 of the 9. It takes a vote of 5 to get something done. And making more of a statement to you about what I think needs to happen than my question. Under early childhood education, I think that, and this is for the commissioners as well, because I do think that's going to be an area that, no matter what comes out of this, that's going to be a major area that we all need to look at. Because the whole issue of oral language development is critical as an integral part, because that is the precursor to reading. And we know that kids who learn to read on level by grade 3 will be very successful in school. And so I haven't seen in any of the materials that have been presented to us that whole notion of reading on grade level and what needs to happen to make that happen. So I would, encourage you, as you are fleshing this out, and would encourage SOP and anybody else that's fleshing out, that we take a very serious look about what does really good early childhood education look like. Glad to know that you did make a notation on the discipline issue, because it is real. There is a pipeline to prison going through our schools, and we need to do something about it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my questions and remarks.
Respond to that, to
Yes.
the questions. First of all, we do plan to provide our information to the current school board members. We will possibly, some of us, be in Austin as well for the legislative session. One thing about, if you issue a set of recommendations, what is there to ensure that the school board does anything with them or follows them? Well, that's an interesting thing, because I would almost counter with another question. What would exist to ensure that if a charter is passed, the school board abides by and follows every provision of the charter? There's nothing in the code that requires them to follow it or has any enforcement provisions should they violate it. Just like current school board policy. So ultimately, whether you have a charter or not, you're going to be reliant upon the goodwill and best intentions of the leaders we've elected to be the trustees.
Thank you for that, but that wasn't my question, but thank you for that.
But that relates to what you're saying about the works with the school board and et cetera. And the early childhood by grade 3, we'll definitely look at that. We know that literacy, and especially the development of literacy early, is essential to long-term, and you're right about 3rd grade. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, that comment's scary. Thinking about what you just said. Basically, if no one wants to do anything, nothing gets done. Well, that's scary.
Absolutely.
And I mean, this is maddening that I keep hearing the same thing over and over, that the district can do this and that, but doesn't get it done. You've got a list of coalition here of huge groups of people. I guess they don't want to listen to you. I don't know. I'm asking you, because I don't know if they want to listen to you or not. Mr. Garza said something about the cost. If you had to put 220 people into each school, and they were 50,000 each, it'd be 12 million for each nurse and each librarian. So it'd be 24 million, but I think some schools already have librarians and nurses, so it wouldn't be nearly that much. Secondly, same thing with Mr. Mendez and Mr. Freeman. It's maddening to see this over and over. You can recommend, you can ask, you can put a charter in, but what seems to be the course of action most people in the city want to take seems to fall on deaf ears.
And I think that's a sad reality that we all should work to rectify. One thing about our coalition, I do want to point out, we're a relatively young coalition in that we've been meeting for probably about maybe a year or so since this Home Rule Charter Initiative started. And we don't always, less than a year, less than a year. 6 months or so. So we're relatively new, And we don't always agree on everything. What we presented is what we've gathered from our community. On individual issues, we all keep our autonomy, and we may have different opinions, and you may hear different opinions from different organizations within our coalition. But we plan on staying the course and fighting the good fight and speaking anywhere that will have us. We have our information on the screen, our community, ourschools.org, or on Facebook. Any civic group, any neighborhood group that would like to engage with us, we want to be involved, and we're here to improve student outcomes and to listen to the community and build a real plan. We're going to have more community meetings. We're going to, after the holidays, right now people are traveling, but we'll resume them in the spring. We're going to continue to gather input. So it's not an easy fix. It's maddening. It's frustrating. But when I became a teacher, I didn't come to Dallas ISD because I thought it was going to be easy. I wanted to make a difference for kids, and we're just going to have to keep fighting and keep raising our voices as long as we can, as loudly as we can.
And one more thing, just a quick follow-up. I'm like Mr. Ranger. We showed up in first grade at Claire Oliver. That was it. I mean, there wasn't a pre-K, there wasn't a kinder. We just started school. And is there any, I'm curious about this. The only reason I wonder about early childhood, it seems like in third, fourth grade, whether they went to pre-K or they started at kinder or they came from a charter school or they were homeschooled, they all seem to be on the same level. Where I'd like to see a real indicator that coming to pre-K is making a difference in their reading. I'm going to base it on reading only. Just in reading comprehension and their scores, because the first set of scores would be third grade stars. Or it's been taxed, so you wouldn't use stars. That's a little bit too predated. So if anything you can come up with, okay?
And I think we can absolutely gather some of that data for you.
If I could just comment, the data on Head Start is very clear about how successful those kids were that went through the pre-kindergarten. I am a pre-K kid myself, believe it or not. I went to a preschool when I was 3 years old because my brother went before my mother insisted. I was reading before I went to school. So there is, and it also depends on the quality. It's not only the educate, but it is the quality of the engagement that makes a difference.
That's an excellent point. Not all early childhood programs are created equal.
Kind of like school districts. Do you have a question?
I'm good now. Okay. I want to go back to where you said, we believe that the massive campaign contributions from outside entities lacking real roots in our communities discourage citizen involvement. And then I want to go back to something Ms. Isom Newsom just said. She said, you have a collection of very powerful people here. I've counted, and I might miss some because I went with the ones that actually have teachers in it. But on here, correct me if I'm wrong, you have 9 teacher unions. Okay?
Well, some are administrators, I believe.
Okay, teacher and administrators. Nonetheless, there are unions or coalitions of whatever you want to call them. And to me, as a parent, that also, those are also included with people that do contributions or entities, just like a regular PAC would be, So, to me, you're saying, no, they can't do it, but it's okay, we do it. And again, I'm coming in from a parent seeing from outside in, brand new parent just coming into the district, and my son being promoted to first grade. Let me just glow about that one. Why is it okay for y'all, but not okay for them? And why is it okay, period? And with all these parents' unions, teacher unions, do you have a union just for parents or a union just for children that is only elaborated of parents and nobody that has, teachers or anything that could, want to keep their jobs or whatnot, So that's one. And my second one, I want to follow up with something that Commissioner Sandell says. She said that when he asked how's the money made through education, and you said that it's done through contracts, correct? Okay, so my question is, who's the person that makes the decisions on who to give these contracts to? And I believe that is the trustees, and correct me if I'm wrong. So who are the ones that making the decisions on who's gonna be making those monies? Is it the trustees or who else within the district?
Okay, thank you. I can address the first question. For one thing, federal law prohibits using union dues for campaign contributions, and so unions are handcuffed from using their operating budget for political contributions. Now, individual members can contribute to a PAC and they can make contributions. That's nowhere near universal. And what happens is if you look at, and not to go too far down the rabbit hole on campaign contribution laws and Citizens United, go back and pull some of the records if you're curious. The contributions from education associations, organizations, unions pale in comparison to the business community's PACs. They are multiple times more money in dollars. And we've seen that as a recent trend in Dallas. This absolutely does discourage citizens. I've heard from several citizens that wanted to run for office but said, I can't raise $120,000. I can't raise $25,000 for an unpaid volunteer school board position. And so I believe that there is a problem with campaign finance in school board elections. And because of the way the laws are currently written, the playing field is not level. Other PACs and individual business people can virtually make unlimited contributions, and we've seen an explosion of that. And the evidence is in the campaign finance reports on any of the current elections, of the recent elections. On the contracts, yes and no to your description of that process. The administration makes recommendations and develops a process for awarding contracts. There are laws that are applicable to that. The trustees, depending on the dollar amount of the contract and depending on the specifics of that contract, have the right to approve that contract or deny that contract. But the recommendation, in my experience, usually comes from the administration.
And another part where you're talking about, for as parents are concerned, the unique thing about our coalition that there are organizations that are teachers unions. There are also community organizations that engage parents, like the Texas Organizing Project, NAACP, LULAC. They're actually talking to their members who are parents who have kids in the community. Now, far as it being a union, it's membership based. People pay membership dues to top NAACP as well as LULAC. The power that we have collectively and that we proved in George Foreman's election is, you can have $120,000. That don't mean you're gonna win an election. It's all about people knocking doors and having real life conversations with voters. That, signs don't vote, people vote. So I think moving in the future, what our coalition will be able to do is hold our elected trustees accountable, because we will have a collective group of people that can go out and knock doors, have real conversations with parents, and that's something that the business community is not going to do. As you see, Support Our Public Schools can't even make it to a community meeting. They can't even stick around and hear what we have to say.
And I think your idea about parent and student organizations is a great one. My oldest daughter will be starting in DISD next year, and I look forward to joining the PTA and becoming active. And if there's a need for a wider organization in the city of Dallas, maybe we can talk after the meeting.
Excuse me, Chairman White, can I interject? There is no such thing as a teachers' union. This is a right-to-work state. Unions are prohibited by law.
Which is why I said organization or alliance.
Yes, but
I did clarify that. I know the difference.
They do not have any kind of union powers and stuff. They're just associations.
But we believe in organization, so if parents and students want to organize, we would support that effort and however we could.
One thing, could I interject?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Mendez had his hand up. Okay.
I think I'm missing the point here, or I'm missing something. I know we were talking about somebody just made a bunch of money on a contract. What is the difference between making a lot of money on this contract as to making a lot of money on the charter? I mean, to me, somebody's making a lot of money somewhere, and it's not the school system.
But if you control the trustees, then that gives you a little bit more influence on contracts. And then we talk about the superintendent as well.
I'm going to, given the hour, I'm not recognizing anyone else on this subject.
Well, I have something about the policy.
Okay.
If I can just say that.
Yeah.
There's a policy at Dallas ISD that prohibits trustees from dealing with vendors. There's also a policy under E-rate, very strict, about trustees dealing with vendors. So that's a policy.
Put that on the record. Yes.
And I think that's an important governance question. Is the role of trustees in the budget, in finance, and in contracting. And that's something that should be examined closely, both under the current system and any proposed system.
All right, I want to say for the record, nothing that comes from our commissioners is to be construed, and I don't think you want it construed, that any sitting trustee now is involved in something that might or might not be, appropriate behavior. So you don't need to respond. I'm just saying that for the record. I appreciate Commissioner Ranger pointing out there is law, right, that trustees have to follow. And I want it clear on the tape, I'm looking you right in the eye, camera, right? No one at 9:20 is inferring or imputing to any sitting trustee that anything wrong is going on. We are not questioning the motives of the capitalist system, whether or not someone can make a fair profit from getting a contract from this district, all right? The chair is not going to allow that in the record, and those kind of questions are over, so I'm reserving the last question, and I love communities and community schools. When I grew up, a neighborhood school was your anchor of your community. You got to go to work, you got to pray, and you got to get in your neighborhood school, and if you didn't get home, your neighbor called your mother. But I have a lot of friends who are librarians who've been laid off by the city of Dallas. If I were to take your position that every school has to have a DISD librarian, I now have to talk to people who took me to breakfast just this Saturday about helping get more money for the Dallas Public Library System. In the nature of librarians, and this is a good example of community, I think taking all your collective organizing power, and I'm an empty nester taxpayer, I would think that somehow the city council and the trustees could figure out when they put a facility in, or they're going to hire librarians, that the issue is getting books to kids, digital books to kids, and somehow building a community that has a school, a library in a school. I don't know the answer, but I would ask your group to think about that.
I think that's a great suggestion, and my understanding is that we have at least one DISD school.
We do, and I think we have a model to build out, because money is not infinite. You're looking at me, and I think to build community around a library, around a rec center, is a way to build a community around your neighborhood school. It's an observation. And the last thing I would say that I hope when you keep refining this is to deal with the language issue. We've heard a lot of one-way, two-way, immersion should be for everyone. When I started this, I didn't realize it stopped at a particular grade. If you come in at a grade above that and you don't know a language, you got to kind of figure that out. I would hope in your next iteration of this, which is very good, I'm being complimentary, that you as a coalition speak to the 70% of the children who might or might not have a language issue, and those who want, as we have heard, in communities that don't have Spanish in particular, but might want immersion, that your coalition would speak to a point of view that you could bring back to us. And I thank you for your time. I know the hour's great, and your observation about being polite and waiting is very much appreciated, and I note it for the record.
Thank you all for your time this evening and your continued service.
Yeah, thank you. To the commissioners, the hour's late. We have one administrative item under number 6 that I just want to get to. The governance subcommittee time is at 2:30 on the 18th and 9th. And we had an incorrect time, so I need a motion to that effect. Second. Okay, let the record reflect. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. I have short remarks. There is a lot of handouts here that I mentioned. One is the early childhood. One is a lot about the attendance boundary stuff. It'll tell you every school in your district who has what, how many kids, is it over capacity, and how poor the school is. And you will see the distribution across the city. They're on the back here. Tino, Mr. Harris, Coach, are you going to help us give these out? So if you can come out when we adjourn, on your way out, there's papers. Yeah, there's papers that commissioners have asked that we read. We're a learning community, all right? Having said that, remember our next meeting is December 1st. Happy Thanksgiving. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second. Motion carries unanimously. We adjourn at 9:25.
Now they just get to all right. See you later.
Boy Scouts.
Yeah, great. Now,